see this kind of wind coming from the other direction. And when it starts coming from the other direction, that's when we're going to see the water build up, and it's going to come in as that storm surge. We're in a position here on the 4th floor of a parking garage, a stable structure high up, where we should be able to see that storm surge. But I got to tell you, if the wind is blowing like this, we're not going to be able to see much, because the rain is so sideways and so strong that I can barely see the trees over there, which are snapped and down in certain parts of the streets, blocking. And we know from earlier, even before the storm surge was coming, there were streets that were flooding. So that's the situation now. Naples getting it the hardest hit right now as the eye wall moves its way through this area, up the west coast. Up next will be Fort Myers, and then after that, where you guys are in Tampa. And as Al has been saying, the storm is...
Well, thankfully we're not in Tampa, because it is headed there later this evening. You can see Naples, that is the live video coming in from that area of the very strong winds. They're getting just battered by the eye wall and the inner core of the hurricane as it makes a landfall very soon. Actually, it's made the landfall, Marco Island, and there's Naples there. So as it continues to push up across, 75, there's Naples, and then eventually up the coast after that. So we are looking at the eye of the storm being around Fort Myers at about 8 o'clock tonight, and then tracking toward Tampa after midnight, and between about midnight and 3 in the morning, and then eventually up into North Florida. The weather that we're dealing with here is still going to stick around through midnight, the early morning hours. I do expect it will start to improve late this evening and definitely overnight, and by tomorrow morning. There'll still be some gusty winds to tropical storm force, but they'll be coming in a different direction, and I do expect that we'll start to see a little bit of sunshine as we get into Monday afternoon. We have a couple of tornado warnings, at least one, right, for Martin and St. Lucie County, and we're still watching a couple of strong cells just off the coastline too. The radar this afternoon.
We haven't talked about the lake a whole lot, too. Yeah. They've been getting the same feeder bands too.
There's Clewiston, Belglade, the lake area.
I mean, there could be some lake surge here, storm surge over on this side of the lake, but once all the winds turn this way, and well, actually this way, yes, you might see it up here, Buckhead Ridge to Okeechobee.
The push now is pretty much from the south toward the north, maybe kind of the more northwest and the northwestern side of the lake because of the wind direction. And then as the storm shifts, actually the storm center, the eye gets north of the lake, we'll start to see those winds come in from the west, and then maybe even northwest for a while, but push all that water against the eastern side of the lake eventually, and maybe a little bit on the southern side too, depending on the final track of this thing. But yeah, we have some pretty good rain bands even around the lake at this point too, and you can see very intense rain and wind developing across coastal Palm Beach County. This is actually more impressive than it was. I took a break for a few minutes and you can see it's just lining up right along the coast and working its way up in toward the Treasure Coast. We've had reports, well, at this point, over a foot of rain around Fort Pierce, and unfortunately it was right around the downtown area too. Most of that fell overnight and early this morning, but it continues. And some of the rainfall, there's that area, and it's not just a small area that saw a foot of rain. It's actually quite the large area of the Fort Pierce, city of Fort Pierce, and back even toward 95 and the Turnpike. Look at how it trails off there all the way back in along the Turnpike too. And then there are a couple other swaths of rainfall that are all the way down into Palm Beach County and a little farther south. So big rain event for us in that area, Fort Pierce. About a foot of rain, and it still is continuing to come down. Look at the wind speeds. There's Lakewood Park. That's St. Lucie County Airport, actually 64 miles an hour. Look at how that jumps quickly. Around a 45 and 20 miles an hour stronger. And we also have some pretty good rain rates even around Fort Pierce, or I should say Port St. Lucie at the present time. I believe, is there a news conference that we're going to join in on at this point?
Actually, we're going to go to Michelle Casada.
Okay.
She's been out, and you were just talking about out near the lake, and James was talking about it too. So let's go to Michelle, who's been out there checking on the dike and the status out in the Pahokee area.
Well, out here in Pahokee. The wind gusts are really, really strong, and the rain is coming down so hard it feels like it's stabbing you in the face. We've seen a lot of debris flying around with these palm fronds snapping off of trees, and there goes my hat right now. The wind is just so strong, it's kind of hard sometimes to keep your footing at times. But, you know, one of the concerns that Palm Beach County officials had, obviously, in this area was the dike. You know, they did say they felt a little bit more confident once they saw Hurricane Irma take that westerly track. Their concern were some areas where the dike has been undergoing repairs. Culvert 12 was one of the areas mentioned by Palm Beach County officials yesterday. You know, this area, much of the Glades was evacuated. Just see how strong the winds are right now. This area was evacuated because of this reason, just because they were afraid they've had major issues with the lake. They just wanted to take those precautions because of possible surge and strong tropical storm force winds, category 1 even possibly winds that we might feel from this hurricane going up to the west coast of Florida. So we're keeping an eye on things here in Pahokee. Right now the water doesn't seem too choppy, doesn't seem too crazy out here. We're just dealing with a lot of wind and a lot of rain. We'll toss it back to you guys.
The Herbert Hoover Dike, and its name tells you how old it is. Always a concern, under construction, reconstruction, putting up a concrete dike around the perimeter of that lake, but it's an earthen old set of levees. Always a concern. The Army Corps says they're confident there will not be a breach, but Steve, of course, will continue to keep an eye on that. That's one of the critical concerns here always.
Yeah, I think the real concern would be if there was a big shift in the track, and that doesn't appear to be happening. There might have been a subtle shift back to the east today, but really just a couple of miles, and that's about it. You know, the track yesterday and the day before was pretty much just skirting along the coastline on the west coast of Florida from Fort Myers and then eventually up into Tampa and up into the Panhandle, and it made a landfall at Marco Island, but it just grazed land. This is not a big shift or anything like that, and I suspect a lot of people who are watching right now, and especially earlier a few hours ago, were wondering, wow, has this made a turn toward our area? Because the weather changed dramatically, and there's some pretty good winds popping up, 70, 80 miles an hour, and even stronger to the south. But no, the track is still the same. It is moving toward Fort Myers and then eventually Tampa later tonight. Probably the eye will be around Tampa, we'll say about 2 to 3 in the morning. Naples, of course, live video coming in from that area where
42-mile-per-hour wind gust at Naples Airport.
Wow, 142 miles an hour at the airport.
It says.
So there's a shot, and there's a live shot right out of Naples, and it is really coming down in the buckets of rainfall, and that's actually, what was it, 144?
142.
142. No, that's a wind gust, yeah.
A gust. Yeah.
So I was going to say that's what the Euro model had yesterday for.
It did have 140.
It had exactly that number for the wind speed over Naples.
So we have another tornado warning, Indian River County. So if you look on Viper right there, you see the 3 tornado boxes, warning boxes. Here, let me.
All right, let's take a look. Just ignore the calm. Obviously, it's not calm winds. The weather sensors and the weather stations are going down one by one, and if they're not reporting, they just show calm instead of the actual wind speed. So there's our warned areas at this point.
Those are the 3, yeah. Until 5 o'clock.
This is almost the entire Treasure Coast along the coastline, with the exception of Stewart South toward.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. Can we take a look at bring the radar back and we'll take a look at exactly what we're looking at for rainfall. So it's just, again,
that's
it's this persistent one cell after another coming in along the coastline. So we have now tornado warnings from Sebastian all the way down through Stewart. The entire coastline is under a tornado warning. It's actually several tornado warnings at this point, isn't it, James? There's several coming through.
Three tornado warnings.
Traffic cam in Palm Beach Gardens at the mall right now, and obviously the weather in northern Palm Beach County continues to pick up, and that is spreading north in toward DeQuesta, Hope Sound, and eventually all the way up the coastline after that. And you can see some of the inner core of the hurricane on the side of the screen on Viper 5 Max, way down the corner here. That's where the eye is. This is not expected to move any closer to us. It's pretty much moving north at this point, and will track right along the western side of the state. But we're in this for more for several more hours. Likely, what are we? 5 o'clock. It's 5 o'clock now. So I would say another 5 to 6 hours at least, with and a slow improvement around midnight, maybe a little bit before midnight. Overnight, we'll see that a gradual improvement in the weather too. It's what we're watching for here is a couple of things. The eye getting about the same latitude as we are here in our area, so we're kind of through a good chunk of the storm. And then as the eye gets up around Tampa, around 2 or 3 in the morning, we'll finally start to see a lot of the rain and the real strong wind field pull out of South Florida. The official forecast had the winds beginning to diminish late evening and slowly improving late overnight too. So what you're experiencing now is going to be around for a few more hours. We're just really watching these little cells that come in along the coastline that have stronger winds, because they will cause damage. And we had several cells, tornadic cells, or at least potentially tornadic, that were moving at 70 and 80 miles an hour. They moved in along the coastline. So that's just the rain cell itself. And that is not including any kind of rotation that it might have with it. So very, very strong winds.
Steve, just a couple of quick questions, if possible. First of all, is what we're experiencing equivalent to Cat 1? How do you define what we're going through?
No, we're not quite there, because our sustained winds haven't been around. I haven't seen any actually reports, and James they're watching the reports a little closer than I am, but I haven't seen any sustained winds at hurricane force along East Coast Florida.
The last I saw was like 58 mile per hour.
Yeah, so we're well under that, and we're right in the window of what we were forecasting. Pretty much all week. We were expecting about at the peak for gusts about 70 to 80 miles an hour, and just watching to the south, we've seen a couple of numbers pop around 90 miles an hour. So if that trend continues, we may see a couple of spots peak at 90, but just for a short period of time.
And for all the tornado alerts we've had and warnings, any confirmation of any, is there any silver lining in this with everybody on edge? And we have to take each one very seriously. But have we had any confirmed tornado touchdowns, or is the Weather Service even able to do that at this point?
They did confirm one Barefoot Bay, which is just north of Sebastian, and there was damage to a mobile home park there. And I believe that's probably the same mobile home park that was damaged in Hurricane Francis, too, back hurricanes in 04. But as far as the others, I believe there was one to the south that was, I don't know if it was confirmed, but I think there was video coming in down around Broward.
Can I ask a viewer question?
You can ask whatever you want. We're here for a few hours.
We're here for forever. Rhonda Ayala asked about why the ocean water is going out. And I don't know if anybody has been on Facebook and has seen those pictures. There was a video I put on my Facebook page from the Bahamas where literally it looked like there was no water left.
Yeah.
What's going on with the water, being pulled out and then pushed back in? Where and when is it happening and why?
So busy. I want to see these videos, because I understand there's one from Bahamas, and there's one, I heard one from Tampa Bay, and there's another one down in the Keys of the water literally getting pushed away from the beach and what should be the ocean floor actually exposed, something that you would normally see like in a tsunami type event. And let me just quickly, this is my show and tell moment where, and Bob Sheets, former director of the Hurricane Center, told me to do this whenever I wanted to explain storm surge. Just fill up a glass of water or a cup of coffee and you blow on the top of it, and the water will pile up on the other side in the rim of the glass. You're making a mini storm surge when you do that. And in the case of a hurricane, that water, in this case it would be around Fort Myers. All this wind is blowing the water away from the beach in the Gulf of Mexico. So the water levels around Fort Myers right now would be lower than other areas around southwest Florida.
Yeah, this is Tampa, right, Steve. So describe this to people who can't see it. That's incredible.
So this wind is blowing offshore, and because it's a massive hurricane, it is, it's unbelievable.
The beach is gone. I mean, the water's gone on the beach.
Well, here's the really the distressing part of this. When that eye gets north of Tampa, over, it is going to come in a massive amount of storm surge, and all that entire area will be in a feet of water.
And Steve, for people who are watching, all of our jaws are dropping. For people who are not, it is though a giant straw or bowl dumped the water away from the beach.
Wow, look at all the
It's barren
out there. They're just
imagine looking. This is Port Charlotte right now, gentlemen. Imagine looking at the beachfront and it is moved backwards. Imagine the ocean part of the beach is moved back, leaving the beach itself bare. But of course, your concern is when it comes rushing back in, the real danger is posed by that surge.
Yes, and then coming in the opposite direction is 15 to 20 inches of rain that's falling around the lake and on the west coast of Florida, because that's all flooding out those channels and inlets. And we have the inland waterway that connects Stewart to the lake, and then Clewiston back to the west coast of Florida. That water is now flowing in this direction, and the storm surge is flowing back in, and it's all going to meet up around Fort Myers and spots around Tampa. We have Tampa Bay. The water collects in that area, and it can't go anywhere because it's locked in coves and bays. The only place it can go is up, so it just continues to rise, and that's storm surge. And in Tampa, they've had even weak hurricanes and some strong tropical storms where the storm surge, I've seen some of the numbers, 10 to 15 feet, and these weren't big hurricanes. This one is, so it could cause the only one saving grace here, and it's a little bit of light, is that the center of the storm is right at the coast, so the storm surge wouldn't be as significant as if the eye was off the coastline by about 50 or 100 miles. That will help them a little bit. So what will happen in Port Charlotte and all those areas is that water will rush back in tonight. I would say, well, Port Charlotte, we're looking at probably 10, 11 o'clock tonight. It will rush back in, and it's going to be extra high because you now have normal tide level and you have the storm surge coming in at the same time. It's pretty dramatic. And I'm probably wondering, would that happen here?
Right.
No. And you will see a drop in the water level here, but we're saved a little bit along the east coast of Florida because you go out in the ocean, it drops off very quickly, the depth of the ocean. You go a couple miles off and you're in 80, 100 feet of water. And in the Gulf of Mexico, as you saw, that's very shallow. It's like a shallow bowl. So it has a much more dramatic storm surge there because it's shallow even out a few miles. Here, it drops off very quickly and the storm surge, and that's why we won't see as high a storm surge here as you would in the Gulf of Mexico. Some famous hurricanes, Camille, Katrina, they had 20 to 25 foot storm surges. Actually, Camille was approaching 30 feet for a storm surge. We would never see that here. We would see maximum worst case scenario for storm surge is about 10 to 15.
Tornado warning going, and it's pretty much went straight through the middle of Port St. Lucie.
Okay.
Looks like it's weakening a little bit. It's not all that impressive on radar, but the couplet definitely still there.
Still just the same area.
Just moved through here, and now it's up towards a White City.
Yeah, and so that warning is
possible
still
tornado,
in effect.
and that's until 5 o'clock. The warning for that is until 5.
That's a tornado warning until 5?
Or 4:45. The one to the north is 5 o'clock.
Okay, so another 10 minutes.
Could you incorporate your safe room advice again for people who are asking about it?
Yeah, sure. And after we should talk about if people are listening or they want to listen and the power goes out.
Right.
We should mention that. Yeah, the safe room is a room in your house, wherever you live, usually or preferably on the lowest level of your house. An interior room's best, no windows, that you can go and stay and ride out the worst of the storm. It might be 20, 30 minutes. You can stay in there. We'll let you know when you should go in there. It's when you're in your house and you feel like it's being compromised and you may be at risk just being in the house. And this is a room that you can go to for a short period of time and ride out the worst weather of the storm and then come back out of that safe room. I always recommend that you keep some of your supplies in that safe room because it's possible you may end up there for a couple of hours at the same time. So have a flashlight and batteries and of course, medical supplies if you want that, blankets, and if you have children, toys and books, and I'm pretty sure they're not going to want to stay in a safe room for very long, and you're going to be stressed. So to keep them calm and preoccupied, it's always good to have something to distract them from the hurricane that's going on outside.
79 mile per hour wind gust at PBIA.
So we're almost to 80 with our wind speeds. That's Palm Beach County. I mean, those are, I don't know what the latest numbers on the customers without power. We were around 300,000 just about